Hello, everyone, and welcome to the President's Play Games channel. I finally got around to starting the channel, and basically, what we're going to be doing is we're just going to be playing a bunch of the new campaign trail and maybe some other political games on the channel as well when I can find any. I will leave a link down to this game in the description if you want to try it out. But essentially, we're just going to be going through a bunch of presidential elections every video and seeing if we can win. Either we'll play, kind of depending on what I feel, we'll either play as the historical candidate or we'll play as a loser, see if we can get him to win, or in some cases just not lose so badly. And today, I figured we'd start with not 2020. I'm not going into that realm of madness. We're going to start in 1988 with George H.W. Bush and Michael Dukakis. Now, George H.W. Bush was the vice president for Reagan for 8 years. Michael Dukakis, governor of Massachusetts. And by this point in time, Reagan had taken the country to a very conservative approach, which there's now a bigger divide on how people view that versus in 84 when Reagan ran for a second term. The consensus was more that everything Reagan was doing was very good, going from domestic to foreign policy, but by the end of his second term, the country seemed a little bit more polarized on his policies, but still decently popular when he left office. So now he's got his vice president, George H.W. Bush, trying to take control with the challenger, Michael Dukakis, very liberal governor from Massachusetts, loses the election in almost what is the last landslide in modern elections. Nowadays you kind of have more kind of even elections, more predictable outcomes. So we're gonna go ahead and take control of Michael Dukakis. Now for running mates, let's see what we got. We got Lloyd Bentsen, who was the actual running mate, senator of Texas, very long time, very seasoned politician. John Glenn, senator of Ohio, who's also an astronaut before he became a politician. He's gonna help us in the Midwest. We got Al Gore. He's very, very young, even younger Al Gore. He's from the South, but I don't know if he's really gonna be a guy. We also have Jesse Jackson, who I'm probably really not gonna pick because Jesse Jackson's a very polarizing figure. He said a lot of stuff that a lot of people didn't like, especially in the one state called New York. I think we're actually probably gonna go for the historical candidate, Lloyd Bentsen here. I think he's gonna give us the best chance to. Obviously, he balances the ticket. He balances the experience part with George Bush. So we're going to go and pick him. Normal, default. You can also switch the game to proportional, which essentially just means the popular vote determines who wins. But we're going to go, obviously, the way it usually is. And, alright, we start off leading pretty nicely. South is decently competitive still. We got a lot of states. California is not 100% in our column, but Michigan and Ohio are some swings. And even Louisiana is voting for us. Interesting. Alright, what message will you emphasize most as you accept the Democratic nomination? I'll take the attack to George Bush, who has all the weaknesses of Reagan but not the strengths. As governor of Massachusetts, I've led capable. I will call on Americans, who've been cast aside by our winner-take-all economy, lopsided taxes, to unite and send the Republicans a clear message. I'm a capable, pragmatic leader. Okay, so we can attack Bush. We can kind of run on our governor policies. We can make an appeal to the people, or we can take a pragmatic approach. Okay, so this is kind of... Okay, so Dukakis in real life didn't really go after George Bush, and that kind of cost him. So I think we're not going to go straight full-on attack. We'll go with this one, though. We'll call on all Americans who have been cast aside by our winner-take-all economy and our lopsided tax cuts to unite and send the Republicans a clear message this fall. Americans seem ready to move on from Reagan, but partly on the assumption that you are a pragmatic, moderate, administrative type, not liberal like Mondale. Okay, so maybe we want to tone down the liberalism. Oof, that did not... The South did not like that very much. So what makes this... So... Judging by the last question, they don't really want liberalism, so we're going to take the attack to George Bush instead. Unlike George Bush, I have led an executive branch of government. I will make Massachusetts a centerpiece, which kind of an advice from the previous question kind of told me not to do that. We'll strike a balance. Because I kind of did that with the last question, too. George Bush is nowhere near as popular as Reagan. It's not a bad idea to make sense of tax. Man, South is really going. Let's go to Colorado. What do you have to say about your running mate? Lloyd Benson has been involved in government of this country since '48. Qualified, yeah. To what extent will you run a campaign focused on your background as the child of Greek immigrants and your rise through American society? We would do better to focus on political views and attacks rather than emphasize my own heritage. Honor a series compare and contrast advertising from my own humble background with that of George Bush. Assets. I think we'll go for this one because we can compare it with Bush. Your own biography always plays well. Okay. Helps us a little bit. Look at this. Imagine a Democrat nowadays being competitive in Kansas, of all places, in North Dakota. It's crazy. It's also crazy to think that a Republican can be competitive in Maine and Colorado. Let's go to Ohio, though. Only with you back. What's your opinion on selection of Dan Quayle? Dan Quayle, one of the youngest vice presidents ever elected. He was quite unpopular because he was very inexperienced when he was elected vice president. So it was a very controversial decision by George Bush to nominate him. And there's a lot of clips where you can go look up where Dan Quayle says, I say Quayle a lot, and it's Quayle, where Dan Quayle says a lot of kind of stupid stuff, especially debates. So yeah, we're going to harp on this. Attacking Dan Quayle is a no-brainer. You can't let this terrible choice of running mate go unpunished. Nice. Alright, debate time. Just going to pick this one. Of course. Okay, so we lost the debates, which doesn't help me. We're still holding on a little bit. Let's go back to Ohio. How do you plan to attack the candidacy of George Bush, if at all? Okay, so we're not going to do this, because it's essentially what Dukakis did in real life. We believe in liberalism. We don't want to do that, because that's essentially what the game told me not to do in the very first question. This kind of goes into the Iran-Contra affair. We can kind of talk about myself, compare and contrast. But this also talks about the Massachusetts Miracle, which the game kind of said we don't want to talk too much about. So I think we're going to go this one. We're not going to go... These all kind of talk about the liberalism in Massachusetts, which, again, the game kind of told me not to do. So we'll go for this answer. I grew up middle class and interestingly understand the concerns. Bush grew up as the millionaire son of a senator to Prescott Bush. And has remained out of touch ever since. Voters respond to your background and upbringing, especially in comparison to that of Bush. Man, that's close. The Bush campaign is attacking your opposition to the invasion of Grenada and bombing Libya. What is your response? Okay, we're not doing this. This is exactly what Dukakis did in real life, and he kind of made himself look like an idiot. So we can say I supported both of these actions in general. I criticize specific aspects of their implementation. I'm interested to know why Bush would distort the truth on this. We need to counterattack Reagan and Bush for the pointless increase in defense spendings. Now, at the time, this foreign policy of Reagan is actually quite popular, so I think the first option is going to be the best one here. The position's not that popular as voters learn about it, but at least you're keeping yourself in the fray. Okay, that helped me a little bit. Start 303, popular vote, 50%. Let's go to Louisiana. Are protectionist measures of some kind needed to counteract the dominance of Japan in foreign trade? So in the 80s, this is 1988, free trade is kind of starting to become a thing. It becomes more of a thing under Bush and Clinton, and it kind of gets reeled back under the really all the way up until the Trump administration. I can't recall if George W. Did anything about it, but people in the Midwest are very much anti-free trade by this point. So I think we can take limited steps to bring this trade back in balance, but in general we should celebrate. I wouldn't take anything off the table. We have taken too many, so we can kind of take... Our first resort should be to negotiate with Japan and take steps to enhance the competitiveness, but I wouldn't take anything off the table. So we can kind of go full-on protectionist, more free trade. I think let's strike the middle ground. Okay, didn't get me. Could more have been done to prevent the farm crisis, which had devastated the upper Midwest? So something that, yeah, Reagan very believed in small government. He didn't really want to get involved in this. And so we could have stabilized the situation much earlier with aggressive intervention from the federal government. This is probably your best response. Take the attack to Bush. Or Bush, even though it was kind of got time to some of the unpopular things with Reagan. We're going back to Ohio. The Bush campaign is attacking the Massachusetts prison furlough program, which included furloughs for convicted murderers. One such person, Willie Horton, killed again in Maryland. What is your response? Massachusetts has one of the lowest crime rates in the nation. We turn the tables and attack Bush and Reagan for relentless on the national crime rate. The focus of the campaign needs to be on competence and scandals and extreme policy of the Reagan administration. I trust voters will see through this attempt. So we can kind of just not answer it, which I don't think is going to be good. Or we can kind of go and spin this attack on Reagan. I think we'll go with this. Massachusetts has one of the lowest crime rates in the nation. We need to turn the tables and attack Bush and Reagan relentlessly on the national crime rate. This is a damaging attack, but at least you're fighting back against its worst effects. Oh, man. Okay. Oh, we're barely winning. The Bush campaign has repeatedly called you a liberal or the liberal governor and so on. Do you embrace the label? Okay. The game, in the very first question, it said, people like us because we think we're more moderates, so we're going to run on that label. Your base is upset at your hesitancy to use the L word, but at least you're sticking to a strong position on this. Okay, help me a little bit. Let's go back to Ohio. Television advertising is coming to dominate the political campaign season. Where should the greatest emphasis be placed on your ads? My record. Let's attack Bush as a creature of his political handlers who lacks deep-seated convictions or a record of government competence. Let's attack Reagan. Let's attack the Reagan's deficit. Bush's performance has some mixed spots to defend against Bush's dishonest allegations on various issues. Or we can essentially do what he did in real life. Okay, let's go for option 2. Didn't get anything. Help me a little bit, I think. Well, Ohio's slipping away. The Bush campaign is highlighting the pollution in the Boston Harbor. To counter your claims of the Massachusetts miracle, how will you respond? That we will point out that the Reagan EPA is chiefly at fault for the lack of funds and action in this race, and will attack Bush's dishonesty. I think it would make a good TV ad if we went to Texas and spoke with some of the people who have been put out of work by the oil crash there. Let them ask how they feel about the Reagan economy. Okay, we're not doing option 3. We can essentially just ignore it and let Bush continue to attack us. But I think we'll do this one. We'll point out that Reagan EPA is chiefly at fault. Didn't get a response. Go back to Ohio. Your running mate Lloyd Benson's widely believed to have defeated Dan Quayle in the presidential debate. Will you come back to this moment? Yes. Attacking Dan Quayle is no blamer. You can't let this terrible choice of running mate go unpunished. Oh, Dan Quayle. Oh my god, I think we're starting to lose, though. Do you believe there should be federal funding for abortions? Now, this is 1988. Abortions, especially for Democrats, they're not full-on pro-choice all the way. The Republicans aren't like full-out ban it either. It's kind of more of the more center-right, center-left position. I support the federal effort to increase the health. This haven't taken too far. The Roe v. Wade case law, but federal funding for the practice is an entirely different matter. I have an open mind to the issue, but it would depend on who needs the money and what case they can make during the federal budget process. Okay, I don't want to go this one, so I'm kind of stuck between. I think this may be attack. You gotta remember, there's a lot of the base for Dukakis that is liberal, so I don't really want to anger them. Okay, they didn't give me any advice, which is probably a good thing. Yeah, we're barely losing right now. It's pretty close. Like, Michigan and Ohio could swing this election. What measures should be taken to assist states such as Texas, which have been hurt by the recent crash in oil prices? We need a comprehensive energy strategy and re-implement price supports for domestic oil production. Cheap oil is an overall benefit to our economy. I think the majority of voters will understand that this fall, so we can pretty much say your problem doesn't matter because it benefits more people. We need more funding for federal programs to mitigate the worst effects of this downturn. I believe that American companies should have every right to bid on foreign oil, which kind of goes back to a free trade type thing. I think I'm going to go. We need to form a comprehensive energy strategy and re-implement price supports for domestic oil production. This is a bold position, but it could definitely help some Texas Democrats make up their minds. Texas is not entirely out of the question. We're 3 points down, so brought the Midwest back in the fold. You support additional gun control measures at the federal level. By this point, crime is kind of a concern. Not as big of a concern as it was 4 years ago, but it's still kind of on everyone's mind. So we can go to two extreme answers, either saying, no, we don't support any gun control, which as a Democrat, even in 1988, is an outlandish thing to say, or we can go heavy gun control, which, again, as a Democrat, in 1988 is an outlandish thing to say. So I think we can just do this. I would only support limited steps on the issue, like ban of cop killer bullets. Overall, I'm an opponent of increased gun control. Didn't help us too much. Lost us a lot of support. Okay. Well, whatever. How about you just we will hammer on this, because this is one of the big things that Dukakis needed to hit on in the election, in the campaign, and he just didn't do it. So this is like probably one of the biggest scandals in American history, and this should have been enough to win Dukakis the presidency, but Dukakis is a terrible campaigner. This is a good opening to remind voters of Bush's unpopularity and possible lack of judgment. Bush pretty much would say in like speeches and stuff that he wasn't involved in any of this. He had even no idea what was going on, which people kind of called out. It's like, how are you the vice president and you really had absolutely zero idea this was going on? Yeah, so people kind of figured he was lying about that, but didn't bring him down because no one really talked about it. In 1977, you vetoed a law requiring teachers to begin the school day with a recitation of the Pledge of Allegiance. What were you thinking? Is that like a what were you thinking type thing, or is that like what were your thoughts? This is an attempt for Republicans to deflect the attention from the unpopularity of their own candidate, Mr. Bush, and his elitist backgrounds and policies. I have nothing to hide. This is in line with the 1943 decision of the Supreme Court. It seemed highly likely at the time that this law was going to be struck down by the Massachusetts Supreme Court. I'm going to say this, like, it was going to be struck down anyway. I have nothing to hide. This could sound a little, like, unpatriotic, which some people may not like. I think we're going to go this. It was probably going to be, it seemed highly unlikely at the time that this law was going to be struck down by the Massachusetts court anyway. Many voters struggle to make sense of your rationale. Oh, shit. Okay, so we're barely losing. Is it true that you are a card-carrying member of the American Civil Liberties Union? Northeastern college campus type things. At one time, I was a member of the ACLU, but I've been as concerned as any good American by some of the cases that the organization has taken on in the past few years. I don't share every belief this group has, but I'm not going to cancel my membership because of some spurious institutions from the right. I'm proud. We kind of reduplicate them. We can kind of connect with these guys. We kind of already have the Northeast on lock. So I think we are going to go for this one. This is probably the best you can do with this attack. Okay. Right now we just need Ohio or Michigan. We need one or the other, which right now we have Michigan, which gets us enough. We also can't lose California. California's extremely close. Yeah, this is like the last election, I think, where California is an actual close state, a swing state. After this, it kind of becomes a safe Democrat state. Are you willing to rule out any further increases to the federal income tax? As president, I will do anything I can to cut income tax further. My opponent will raise taxes, and so will I. He won't tell you I just did. You can essentially do the Walter Mondale thing, which is not very good. We can do the George Bush thing, read my lips. There will be no new taxes under my administration. I hope this isn't necessary, but it will be irresponsible. Some kind of, you know what? Let's steal the George Bush thunder. Let's see. I didn't get any feedback, but it didn't seem to do too much with barely winning. Let's go to California. What is your position on capital punishment? At the time, the death penalty is a very controversial thing. I believe that the capital punishment is ineffective at reducing crime and is not applied in an equal manner. I do not support the practice. I believe if a state wishes to impose capital punishment, that it should have every right to do so. We need to do anything necessary so we can come out. I don't know if I want to come out on the extreme right or left, so we're just going to do the middle. I believe if a state wishes to impose it, they should. As capital punishment becomes an issue, it's difficult to find a position that doesn't alienate some groups of your potential voters. All right. It's close. California went back more than my column, but man, it's close. To what extent will you remind voters that you served in the United States Army? It wouldn't hurt to mix in some old photographs of myself in military bases, dressed with tough on defense ads as we run. I don't know, that kind of strikes me as very similar to the whole tank photo shoot thing. I will mention this aspect of my biography frequently, particularly in contrast with Dan Quayle. I served honorably in the U.S. Army, but Bush was basically a war hero. I think we'll go with this one. I mean, I think Dan Quayle's just dead weight, so I think any chance we have to attack him will work. It never hurts to remind voters of your time in the military. Oh, that really helped. Okay. Let's go to Ohio. Where will you spend your final days of the campaign? The Midwest, Illinois, Michigan, Ohio, California, Texas, or New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania. Man, I think we got to go Midwest here, Ohio and Michigan. I think that's where it's going to really be. Was as every election, it seems now, the Midwest is where it's won and lost. So here we are on election night. We're going to hope that we can win. Right now, no states have come in. Okay, Indiana came in. Not much of a surprise there. Indiana been a Republican stronghold for a while. South Carolina goes red. A lot of these states. And there's not in the 80s and 90s, really up until recently, Virginia used to be a solid red state. Looks like we won D.C. and West Virginia. There was also a time where West Virginia used to be a solid blue state. Some of the northeastern states, a lot of the South is coming in. Yeah, just a lot of safe Bush states have come in. Just out of curiosity. Oh, wow. All right, so we got the blue states. We won Missouri and Pennsylvania. He ended up winning Maine. I don't think that's going to matter too much. Pretty close right now. It's going to really come down to Michigan and Ohio, really. Okay, Michigan goes for us, and I think that actually should be able to do it. Oregon coming in. We're at 79% complete. He won New Jersey and Delaware. I think California does it, right? I think we win. Yeah, we won. Yep, California put us over. Go to the final results. Yeah, we won. All right, congratulations, Governor. Despite a vicious attack from the Republicans, you have been elected president. Conservatism still has a place in the mind of the public, as seen with this win. So if you prefer to face constant adversaries in the chambers of Congress, the tax cuts for the rich will certainly be scaled back under your administration, as well as you will reduce military spending. With all this new money, perhaps Social Security can be expanded. Just watch the deficit, and you could get reelected if you follow through with your competent persona. Final results was 280. 45.5 million votes to George Bush's 258 electoral votes to 444.8 million votes. So, and then third-party candidates. There's the overall. This was the historical result. Obviously, yeah, George Bush killed Michael Dukakis. But all right, that's going to do it for the first episode of the new campaign trail. Let me know what election you want to see next. There's also a ton of custom scenarios, ahistorical stuff. So if there's one of those you want me to play, let me know in the comments, and thank you for watching.